Oh, yeah. This is the Flophouse, and it's a Flophouse mini. That is a mini episode of the classic hit podcast, the Flophouse Podcast, where we normally watch a bad movie and talk about it. But today we're doing one of our minis where we kind of do something a little bit different. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dan McCoy.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, my friend, comic book author, writer, and editor, Alejandro Arbona. Alejandro.
Hello, guys. Thank you.
Did I give you too many credits? Author and writer, is that too much?
You know, when it comes to comics, authorship is really the artist and the writer.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Thank you for correcting me.
Of course, Elliot is, I don't know, on the moon fighting scrolls or something. I don't know. What's up?
Elliot is doing something or other. I was like, hey, we got a mini scheduled. And he just held up his hands holding what? A slice of bread with mayonnaise on it and one with mustard. And he's like, too busy.
Yep.
So Alejandro, you were kind enough to come down because you have a new book on the way. And I just want to say, I've been friends with Alejandro for a while. You've been coming to the bar, one of my bars. Is that okay? I don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And yeah, we've connected and talked about comics and things like that. You worked for Marvel for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. I'm a longtime editor and writer of comics. And in that capacity, I first met Elliot. We had a chance to work together a couple of times at Marvel and later at a company called Valiant.
Oh, I'm so sorry. About Elliot, not Valiant or Marvel.
And then I was living in Kensington when Hinterlands opened, so I quickly became a regular there. And that's how we all got to know each other. And that's how I came to be here.
How did you get into working in comics?
There's really nothing to that story. I thought it would be fun, and I wrote a letter into Wizard Magazine, and they hired me.
There's something to that. I feel like writing a letter into Wizard Magazine is that's like a kid's dream of how to get hired in comics.
Yeah,
right?
I was doing a little bit of freelance, like publishing type stuff, and I bought an issue of Wizard Magazine. They said they were hiring. That was a little more than 20 years ago. I started my career in comics at Wizard Magazine.
But did you have like a writing background or?
Not really. I went to film school. I was very interested in comics. I was actually trying to break into working in comics. I was hoping to, I was trying to cold email people at Marvel and DC and see if I could get hired. And then that's a kind of backdoor of how I ended up at Wizard, just because I was looking at all the stuff that was out there and I saw they were hiring and then
That's awesome. Dan and I both kind of backed into working in comics as well as both lovers. But I mean, like the way we got around to working in published comics is kind of weird when we got invited to write for the Flash Gordon holiday special.
Yeah, I mean, I was just laughing because, like, I haven't written anything for a comic in so long at this point I have been like, maybe I should get back in touch. Maybe I should look into that.
You totally should.
It just goes to show there is no one way to break into comics. Everybody comes in with their own story. No two stories are alike.
Big hopes and big dreams.
Oh yeah, big money. big money
prizes.
dreams.
So it's funny that you mentioned that you have a film background because you have a new comic that is coming to Kickstarter soon. You want to talk about it's interesting to me because it is so related to film, and we are, in fact, I believe, Checking the 10, a film podcast.
Well, thank you for that prompt. Yeah, I wrote a 90-page graphic novel. It's almost finished, and we are about to hit Kickstarter with basically just the goal of paying to print it and ship it.
Okay.
It's called...
Is that traditional for comics Kickstarters?
No, when it comes to comics Kickstarters, it can be a really risky thing to back one because a lot of times you're paying a high funding goal for a team or a singular cartoonist to write and draw the whole thing. It could take 2 years. I'm still waiting to get a book that I backed in 2018.
Whoa.
But that person keeps posting updates. That book is happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, usually that's the case. You back a Kickstarter in order to finance the creators working on the book. And it could take a year or so. This one, I had a rare opportunity. I was able to do this book on my own, 90 pages. It's almost finished now. The art is finished. Coloring will be finished right after the Kickstarter campaign ends.
That's awesome.
So we'll be able to pretty much wrap it up and ship it pretty quickly. It's called Lake Yellowwood Slaughter. It is a very tongue-in-cheek. It is a slasher. It is a 1983 slasher movie.
Okay.
That's basically the idea. It actually started as the idea came to life when I was watching a movie with some of my old Wizard magazine friends.
Okay.
We were watching Sleepaway Camp 2.
Okay.
We were all kind of reminiscing about childhood summer camp memories. And I just said, imagine a slasher movie where the parents are excited to have their child-free summer of sex and booze and drugs.
Oh, okay.
And then the killer goes after them instead.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the elevator pitch, basically. It gets a little more meta because it is, in fact, the quote-unquote official comic book adaptation of a 1983 slasher movie that never existed.
Yeah, there's definitely a part of Stuart that's like, oh, I love that idea. That's so amazing.
It gets even more meta, and this is where people often advise me to stop pitching because it gets too confusing. It is a slasher movie that was made by a Giallo director who came from Italy to Hollywood to cash in on slashers because it was the early 80s and the Giallo moment was dying down and his career was winding down.
Okay.
And so that's all of that is the behind the scenes stuff. But basically, it's just a tight 90-page, you're in, you're out, the killing.
But you're checking all the boxes. People who like comics, people who like slaughters, people who like Giallo.
People who like complex layers. I think that's really funny because I promised that I was gonna, for one of our bonus content, make this an audio version of this sitcom thing that I wrote. And when I gave it to Elliot, he's like, "This has 2 framing devices. You should probably remove one of them." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to."
I already cut a 3rd framing device out, so I can't kill these other darlings.
Yeah. I feel beholden to mention, since I said earlier that the authorship of a comic is always the artist and the writer combined. The artist is Gavin Guidry, who is a really great young artist who I'm very, very, very excited to do this comic with.
Awesome. Has this artist done anything else that you can direct people to?
He, as we speak, has just finished drawing a run on Action Comics.
Oh, cool.
Featuring a guy you might have heard of, Superman.
What's his deal? What powers does he have?
Well, there's a movie coming this summer. You can see for yourself.
Who's he verse?
I'm sure that everyone's really happy about this movie, and there's no like weird group of people who would prefer it to be like some bad movies that happened in the past.
Dan, those weird group of people might be our hugest fans.
That is none of my business. Gavin also recently did some Uncanny X-Men and stuff like that. He's great. He's been working for a little while, but he's like an emerging artist. I think he's about to break out in a big way. I'm really excited. I think I got very lucky to be able to get him on board for this right before he has a big moment.
I feel like, I don't know, again, Dan and I have both worked within the comics world a little bit, and it still I still haven't gotten over the feeling of like having an artist draw the thing I wrote and how cool that is.
Stuart, I have worked in comics for 20 years.
Yeah.
And when Gavin started sending me pages for this, I felt like this is a dream come true.
Yeah.
This comic is actually turning out better than I ever imagined it. It is a dream come true. I'm so lucky. So
you what are some of your influences here film-wise? Because specifically mentioning Giallo and slasher movies. Do you have like a big background in those two things?
I've definitely been a longtime lover of slasher movies in particular. Giallo is kind of a newer thing to me, but I've spent the last 2 years, I'd say, maybe immersing myself to a degree that may not even be healthy. I think at this point I've watched about something like 100 Giallo movies, and I have a list. It's far from complete. I have a list of maybe like 100 more that I still want to get to.
Where does one find this list?
I have a list on Letterboxd, but it is private. Because I don't want people quibbling with me about the definition of Giallo.
Oh, okay.
That's a big thing with Giallo fans, is that some people are like kind of doctrinaire. Some people are kind of strict about what is or isn't a Giallo.
Genre fans are weirdly specific about their niche genres.
Can you speak about like what the issue is? Because I know that a lot of people do use it to sort of refer to Italian horror, which is not correct, really. I mean, like it's like, like there's horror movies that are giallos, but they are like non-supernatural. Like it's about killers. It's more of a thriller horror, in its most strict sense. Are there other issues that people have?
No, absolutely. There is a definition of Giallo that is very specific and very easy to wrap your mind around, but then that becomes the sticking point where people insist on it being exactly that. I would say for the casual viewer, for people who don't necessarily know Giallo in depth, when you say Giallo, people think of Suspiria right away. Suspiria is pretty much not a Giallo.
Yeah.
It's about witches.
It's about witches. It's a very supernatural. I think people associate Suspiria with Giallo because it does have some strong Giallo elements. It has a mystery element, which is a big part of the thing. And I'm going to give you a definition in it.
A lot of close-ups on eyeballs.
I think it also has to do with the fact that Dario Argento, in particular, the director, is so singularly associated with Giallo that when he makes a non-Giallo movie, people are like, it's the pointing at the butterfly meme, is this Giallo?
Yeah.
You know, whereas Mario Bava, arguably the other father of the Giallo, Mario Bava made crime movies, and he made gothic horror, and he made sci-fi, Planet of the Vampires, and things like that. And no one ever confuses those for Giallo.
Yeah, what's the other one? Like, I don't have Italian, so I can't say it right, but there's like the Polizia ones or whatever.
Polizioteschi.
Yeah, it's like different somehow.
Yeah, well, Polizioteschi is like a cop movie.
Yeah.
A sort of a genre unto itself, but there's a lot of Giallo, especially later.
What do you call it? Like a police story?
Super Cop.
Or Police Story 2.
But to give you a definition, I would say the real definition of Giallo is that it is a murder mystery, specifically. Okay. It is a whodunit. Mm-hmm. It has a cast of characters, and the killer is one of that cast. It's not like your anonymous slasher who is out for revenge. It's somebody in the cast who has some kind of motive, often profit, or, you know, like knocking off a family one by one to get the inheritance, or revenge, or some kind of psychological trauma.
Killer usually wears a trench coat?
Yes.
So in America, Scream would be a Giallo, but not Friday the 13th.
Yes, Friday the 13th is definitely your textbook slasher.
Although the first one maybe actually would be more of a Giallo.
Well, it's funny you say that because those early slashers, the first Friday the 13th or the first two, certain movie or certainly part two, which steals 2 kills in a row from Bay of Blood. Two kills that happen in a row in Bay of Blood.
Wow.
Appear in a row.
You heard it here, folks.
I mean, Giallo fans can tell you this. Everyone knows that. But where was I? Yeah, the definition of the Giallo is frequently the knocking off a cast of characters one by one to building up to the eventual reveal of what is the trauma, what is the motive, who is the killer behind the mask. Whereas with slashers, it's always like a purely revenge-driven, or some kind of obsession. Or
is New York Ripper a Giallo?
New York Ripper is a Giallo. New York Ripper is late in the history of the Giallo phase. It's from the 80s. There are still Giallos being made today, obviously, but the golden age of the Giallo is basically from at some point in the mid to late 60s going through the late 70s. It's basically like a 10 solid years of that's the prime time of the Giallo. I'll give you the quick evolution of how they came along.
Sure, yeah.
There was a publisher in Italy called Mondadori that famously would publish genre books with a colored cover for each genre.
Okay.
And they would publish murder mysteries and thrillers with yellow covers. Giallo is the Italian word for yellow. So people started calling the books themselves gialli as a shorthand for what that was. Incidentally, those Mondadori yellow books would frequently publish translations in Italian of Agatha Christie novels, of Edgar Allan Poe novels. As a result, a lot of people in Italy growing up reading these books are obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe
I can see
and
that.
Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie in particular wrote one book, and then there were none. That book by itself is like the blueprint of what a Giallo is.
Okay,
that has
cool.
That has the structure. It has certain visual elements. It's a book about, a group of strangers are gathered in a place by someone, and they don't know why. They're in a private island. They're on a private island. They don't know who brought them there or why. And then they start being killed off one by one. And there's even a visual element of like the dinner table is decorated with figurines. And each time that someone gets knocked off, one figurine disappears.
Love it.
Which is the textbook like a Giallo movie. The only key difference between that and a Giallo is that the killer doesn't wear any glove, mask, nothing like that. Of course, because it's a book. So concealing their identity just means not describing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't describe them, then the reader doesn't see them. But when you turn that into a visual element, then you have to add a mask, a hat, gloves.
And like I guess the trench coat and like gloves are all only there to like disguise the identity, right?
And frequently to disguise the gender, because a killer can always be revealed to be a woman, but with black leather gloves, you wouldn't suspect it necessarily. That's a funny thing that became such a trope in early Giallo movies that they eventually had to,
like the false flags on different gender identities.
Yeah, the killer being revealed to be a woman.
It's like like De Palma stuff. Like whatchamacallit? Not body double.
Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill. I'm so happy you brought that up, because that Brian De Palma movies and Giallo are kind of tied together closely.
Yeah.
The other thing that all these Italian filmmakers were so obsessed with, aside from Christie and so forth, was Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Same as the French, like, New Wave, Cahiers du Cinema people were obsessed with Hitchcock. The Italians were obsessed with Hitchcock. So in 1960, Hitchcock made Psycho. And coincidentally, a British director, Michael Powell, made this movie, Peeping Tom. And those two movies, same as And Then There Were None, those two movies seem like blueprints for the Giallo. Interestingly, Psycho is black and white, and Peeping Tom is like lurid color, Technicolor, greens and purples.
I feel like color is such a big part, like specific clear color choices is such a big part of Giallo.
Yeah, and that's singularly down to Mario Bava. So Mario Bava, only a couple of years after Psycho, he made a movie called The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which by itself is a Hitchcock reference already, the title. And that is considered to be the first Giallo, because it has that particular story structure of she thinks she witnesses a murder and now someone is after her. The killer's identity is unknown all the way until the end. It features John Saxon.
Yeah.
And then that kind of kickstarted everything, and then immediately people started to make a million of these movies. And then a few years later, he made, but The Girl Who Knew Too Much was in black and white. A few years later, he made Blood and Black Lace, which is, like you were saying, it's lurid Technicolor. That's kind of the movie that set the standard for the use of color in Giallo.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then some years after that, Dario Argento made his first movie, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And that's the last piece of the puzzle. Like, that became the final influence for what would be the textbook Giallo movie.
Yeah, and then now all Giallo is everything. It's all measured against those things.
Pretty much, yeah. And the reason I responded to when you mentioned Brian De Palma before is that Brian De Palma was himself so influenced by Alfred Hitchcock that when he started to make his thrillers in the 70s and 80s, everyone people who knew Giallo started to refer to Brian De Palma as like a neo-Giallo or American Giallo, which I think he claimed he disavowed that influence. He said he's not familiar with Giallo. That's not what he was trying to do.
It's strange, though, because, like, I mean, it's not like I disbelieve him, but to me, what he does is so much closer to Giallo than actually Hitchcock. Like, he pulls things from Hitchcock, but his style is so florid, like a Giallo director, not like Hitchcock is. It's very like well constructed sequences, but it's more of a classical sort of way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disbelieve him either, but it's interesting that if his big influence was Hitchcock, it's funny that it should come. Like Body Double, for example, is such a Giallo. It feels like.
Well, and that he evolved. Like, his evolution of that Hitchcock influence is so similar to the like Italian evolution of the Hitchcock influence.
One thing that's really interesting to me is when people talk about like making neo Giallo or making a modern Giallo.
Yeah,
I've never heard anyone else talk about this, but I really feel like a 90s erotic thrillers are effectively like a lot like Giallo movies.
Yep.
In particular, I think the one that stands out the most is Color of Night.
Yeah.
Which starting with the title alone is already so Giallo.
Yeah. What about, have you, I don't just want to go down a list of like, have you seen this Giallo? Have you seen The Editor, the kind of the parody of Giallo? About it's from the same collective of guys who made like Psycho Gorman and Father's Day and all that stuff.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
It's really funny, and it's obviously like a love letter to. It's both a parody and a love letter to Giallo.
I'm going to add that to my private Letterboxd list. Check it out.
There's also I watched this weird little one from. There was like a micro budget one shot in like southern Indiana called 3 Tears on Bloodstained Flesh. And it is like, it has all the hallmark. It's like a weird, like Midwestern Giallo that works so well. I think like, it's obviously not perfect or anything. But I found it to be really funny and fun. And it's not a parody at all. It's just like a straight, like, what if these tiny budget filmmakers in the Midwest decide to make a Giallo in their backyard, basically.
I like it.
If you like too many podcasts, you'll love Soundheap with John Luke Roberts. It's got clips from all your favourite podcasts, such as Diary of a Tiny CEO.
Leonard Sprague, tell me how you make your money.
I go to the beach and I steal people's towels.
Remember Armour.
Do you remember the trend of everyone whacking themselves on the head with hammers and mallets when they wanted to lose weight?
And Elty John's Lobberly Songs.
I'm here today with Kiki D. Hello, Kiki D.
Hello, Elton.
There's dozens of episodes to catch up on, and brand new episodes going out right now. So if you want far, far, far too many podcasts, then look for Soundheap on Maximum Fun. Boop boop.
All right, we're over 70 episodes into our show. Let's learn everything. So let's do a quick progress check. Have we learnt about quantum physics?
Yes, episode 59.
We haven't learned about the history of gossip yet, have we?
Yes, we have. Same episode, actually.
Have we talked to Tom Scott about his love of roller coasters?
Episode 64.
So how close are we to learning everything?
Bad news. We still haven't learned everything yet.
We're ruined!
No, it's good news as well. There is still a lot to learn.
Woo!
I'm Dr. Ella Hubber.
I'm regular Tom Lum.
I'm Caroline Roper, and on Let's Learn Everything, we learn about science and a bit of everything else too.
And although we haven't learned everything yet, I've got a pretty good feeling about this next episode.
Join us every other Thursday on Maximum Fun.
So, you were saying, in addition to dragging you on here to talk Giallo, you have a quiz for us.
I brought you one of the most fun things about Giallo movies is the title. The title, the titles of Giallo movies are so floored and so great, and I'm a huge fan of them. So I brought you guys a Giallo title quiz that I'm springing on you completely unseen.
Okay.
This is going to be entirely new to you.
Okay.
And you know the expression, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Oh.
This is going to be a stupid game, and I brought a stupid prize. Whoever racks up the most points gets to keep this already opened, 2/3 empty bottle of J&B.
Why J&B?
J&B is Giallo's liquor of choice. It is in practically every movie.
Blended Scotch whiskey. Look at it.
What I like is that it's knowing Alejandro. I feel like at what point did you realize that you don't actually like this bottle that you're drinking? Have you developed a taste for it?
I kind of have. I love the look of the bottle.
Yeah.
I don't like the flavor of the scotch.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very hard to find around here because it is very little in demand. So most liquor stores don't carry it. I had to search far and wide to find one place that did. And then, I've bought a few bottles. This is not my first bottle here. This was actually a prop bottle that I was using a couple of days ago when we shot the video for the Kickstarter campaign.
Shot at Flophouse's favorite movie theater, the Nighthawk.
Yes, indeed. The Nighthawk Cinema very graciously allowed us to shoot in there, and we're very excited for how it's going to turn out. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, when I was watching a lot of Giallo movies, I started to notice, like, oh, wait a second, it's J&B again. Oh my God. And then I started to realize, no, it's practically every single movie, with exceptions. But then you start to realize it's not only Giallo. It actually turns up in a lot of movies. I mean, one of my favorite directors is John Carpenter, and it's in The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Plays a big role in The Thing where MacReady pours it into the computer after it beats him at chess.
Well, the J does stand for Giustorini. Maybe that's an Italian.
It started as an Italian brand, and then it was centuries ago, weirdly. And then it was bought by a British guy, which is the B, Brooks. Giustorini and Brooks. It's a has a long history. I don't know in detail what the history is, but it is a centuries-old brand, weirdly. Anyway, here we go. I brought you guys a little answer key, a little key of shorthand to what titles I'm going to be quizzing you on.
Oh, great.
Because they're long
Excellent.
and confusing, and
fuck.
want to give you some shorthand. But here we go. If you guys are ready to begin, put on your black leather gloves, sharpen your straight razor, pour yourself a highball glass of J&B. We're going to play the Giallo title quiz. It's a few short rounds, couple of questions, one question for each of you per round. Each question 1 point. So let's go. Round one. Let me discard this paper. Round one. Giallo titles are frequently very elaborate phrases and even complete sentences. However, unlike Hollywood titles like The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, these elaborate Giallo titles don't necessarily tell you what happens in the movie. I will read you a plot synopsis from Letterboxd. You match it to the Giallo title. Okay, first, Dan. Oliviero is a drunk, burned-out writer who amuses himself by hosting orgies at his grand country manor and humiliating his wife, Irina. When a number of women are murdered in grisly fashion, Oliviero becomes a prime suspect. Is this All the Colors of the Dark, A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, or 7 Blood-Stained Orchids?
Oof.
And these are all real names. You didn't make these up.
These are I have prepared this quiz with great intellectual rigor. Everything here is very thorough. Everything here is accurate.
Well, going by what you say, C seems almost too much like what you're talking about it's orgies. So your vice is a locked room and only I have the key.
Which is such a banger of a title.
It definitely sounds like, some 2000s alt rock band would have named their album that. But so I'm going to go with 7 Bloodstained Orchids. D.
The same director, Sergio Martino, made a movie called The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. And in that movie, there's a scene where the titular Mrs. Ward, Edwidge Fenech, a great queen of Giallo, is sent a note from her abusive ex-husband that says, your vice is a locked room and only I have the key.
Wow.
That is, in fact, the title of his next movie, which is this one. So the correct answer was C, your vice is a locked room and only I have the key.
Oh, that was cool.
Oh, I talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Stuart. A reporter and a promiscuous young woman try to solve a series of child killings in a remote southern Italian town, rife with superstition and a distrust of outsiders. Is this The Suspicious Death of a Minor?
Seems too obvious.
The Police Are Blundering in the Dark? The Case of the Scorpion's Tail?
It's pretty cool.
Or Don't Torture a Duckling?
I think I'm going to say Don't Torture a Duckling.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Don't Torture a Duckling.
Why did I get that one? I've actually seen Don't Torture a Duckling. That's
Don't
the
Torture
only
a-
one so far that I've seen.
Don't Torture a Duckling is a Giallo directed by Lucio Fulci, who in general is not one of my favorites because his movies are so gory. But this is an early one, and it's actually very beautiful. It does have a lot of weird psychosexual issues, but I think it's one of the best. It's actually one of my favorite Giallos. Later, in the early 80s, he directed New York Ripper, which you mentioned earlier, Stuart. And that movie is so gross. I have a hard time watching it.
See, we have opposite tastes. I'm like, I want my Giallo to be gross and weird, and so I love New York Ripper. And like, Don't Torture a Duckling is almost too sad to me because it's about child murders and the provincialism of this Italian town. I'm like, I don't want actual stuff in my movie.
It is a weird thing being a Giallo fan because it's hard to recommend these to people. A lot of times, even the best ones can be so tough to watch.
Yeah.
And they should come with a lot of content warnings and all that kind of thing.
I want a movie where a guy murders people with a flute.
There are two different Giallo movies where the murder weapon is a carved wooden dildo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
cool.
That's the kind of thing.
There you go.
Round 2, multiple choice question. Giallo movies could sometimes go through multiple releases and re-releases, international releases, different edits on home video, often collecting new titles along the way. I'll give you a Giallo's better-known original title. You pick the alternate title it was also released under. Dan, your movie is Deep Red. Is the alternate title A, The Hatchet Murders, B, Carnage, C, Red Rings of Fear?
Okay. I've seen Deep Red, and I don't think he used a hatchet or whoever it was. I can't remember who the murderer was. Maybe a she. I'm going to go with B, Carnage.
The correct answer is A, The Hatchet
Whoa!
Murders. I am so sorry. I should point out, this is how seriously I took this quiz. All of these titles are all alternate titles.
Wasn't that a
of
straight
different
razor
movies.
in Deep Red? I can't remember.
The first person he kills is the telepath, the psychic woman. He gives a hatchet to the back of the head.
Okay.
Clearly, I don't remember it as well. I got to revisit Deep Red. I remember really liking that one.
Hi, this is Alejandro with the voice memo. The morning after recording this episode, I woke up in a cold sweat with the sickening realization that I had said something wrong on the internet. Dan was right. There is no hatchet in the Hatchet Murders. The scene I was thinking of involved a meat cleaver. So my apologies to Dan. It's funny, the same thing happens in a Mario Bava movie that was called The Red Sign of Madness in Italian, and they released it in the US as A Hatchet for the Honeymoon, despite the fact that the killer obviously uses a meat cleaver. Stuart, your movie is Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll. Is the alternate title... Is the alternate title A, The Psychic, B, The Evil Eye, C, House of Psychotic Women?
And it was Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll. I'm going to say... I think I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to say The Psychic.
The Psychic is the alternate title of another Lucio Fulci movie that was also called Seven Notes in Black. The alternate title of Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll inspired the title of Kira Lajanis's seminal book, House of Psychotic Women.
Yeah, okay.
So that is that one. I have a round 2 bonus question.
Okay.
Speaking of alternate titles, highly controversial upon its release, Bay of Blood went on to become one of the most successful and influential Giallo of all. It had 2 theatrical runs in Italy, a theatrical run in Spain, a US theatrical release, and multiple recut home video releases. Which of these 5 titles was not an alternate title for Bay of Blood? You can each take a turn answering. Is it Chain Reaction, Twitch of the Death Nerve, Ecology of Crime, Last House on the Left Part 2, or Bay of Blood? Dan, you go first.
I'm going to go with Ecology of Crime.
Okay, Stuart?
I'm going to say Twitch of the Death Nerve.
You're both wrong.
Oh, no.
Twitch of the Death Nerve is the best alternate
It's the
title.
best title.
The best alternate title any movie has ever had. Ecology of Crime, I'm sorry, is also wrong. Which of these 5 titles was not an alternate title for Bay of Blood? Ecology of Crime is actually the original title.
Whoa.
Bay of Blood was an alternate title.
Oh, okay.
It was actually released in theaters as Ecology of Crime and Chain Reaction, and then it was released in Spain with the title Bay of Blood. Bahía de Sangre. Okay, round 3.
So wait, it was Last House on the Left Part 2? Is that the wrong one?
No, they
Or
are
was it-
all...
They're all...
They
wait.
are all actual titles that were used for Bay of Blood, but only Ecology of Crime was not an alternate title. It was
So Dan was right.
the
That's what he
original
said.
title.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who was right? What was the right answer
Oh.
is what I'm asking.
Oh, you know what? I got that wrong. You're right.
So
It's
Dan
not
is
an
right.
alternate.
Okay. Phew.
Oh, okay. My mistake. I'm sorry. I scored that one wrong. Dan, my apologies.
No, that's
should
all
we,
right. I
should we
was just-
retake that?
No,
No,
that's
it's fine.
good. All
Okay.
the confusion is what Flophouse fans clamor for, how ramshackle we are.
Well, like the plot of a Giallo, this quiz is very convoluted
Yeah.
and very confusing.
Oh,
so
man, these are
it
some good ones.
confused even me.
God damn it. These titles.
Okay, round 3. Now you know that Bay of Blood was originally titled Ecology of Crime and then Chain Reaction, theatrically in Italy, yet it's best known by its theatrical release title from Spain, Bay of Blood. Likewise, many U.S. Giallo releases discard the original Italian title entirely. In the reverse of round 2, this time I will give you a Giallo's better-known alternate title. You pick the original translated Italian title. Dan, you go first. The Fifth Chord. Was this titled Concerto for Solo Pistol, Black Day for Aries, the zodiac sign Aries, one on top of the other?
Oh boy. I assume. Look, here's the problem. Like, I assume that these are all actual, titles for other ones. So I can't go like, like one on top of the other sounds like it's Italian translated from. But I'm just gonna go with my gut. I'm gonna keep it one on top of the other.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect.
Ugh.
The correct answer was B, Black Day for
It's
Aries.
a good name.
These are, in fact, all original Italian titles for movies that are better known by their alternate titles. One on top of the other was released in the U.S. as Perversion Story.
You gotta say it's a better title, Perversion Story.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then Concerto for Solo Pistol was something called The Weekend Murders, which I actually have not seen.
Concerto for Solo Pistol's a fair name.
Yeah,
agreed. Stuart, your title. What have they done to your daughters? Was this originally called Murder by Vocation, Revelations of a Sex Maniac to the Chief of the Mobile Squad, or The Police Are Asking for Help?
I mean, I would feel like a fool if I didn't go with my gut and say Revelations of a Sex Maniac to the Chief of the Mobile Squad.
That is a good one. I'm sorry. It is The Police Are Asking for Help. Okay, that was a Scotch round for all around.
So wait, Revelations of a Sex Maniac to the Chief of the Mobile Squad. What's the other name for that one?
That is, where's my answer key? I'm drawing a total blank. That is So Sweet, So Dead. It's a movie called
that's
So Sweet, So
also a
Dead.
good name.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just, I could be remembering that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's So Sweet, So Dead. Round 4. Here's a nice simple round. Pick the title that isn't a real movie.
Okay.
Dan, The Iguana with the Tongue of Fire, Footprints on the Moon, Strip Nude for Your Killer, Hacked Apart, or The New York Ripper. Obviously, you can rule out The New York Ripper.
Mm-hmm. And I know that Strip Nude for Your Killer is also real.
Yeah, it's in your search history.
I'm going to go, just because it sounds less Giallo-y to me, I'm going to go Footprints on the Moon.
Footprints on the Moon is a very beautiful movie that people often claim is not a Giallo because it's not really a murder mystery, but it definitely is a mystery. It was directed by Luigi Bazzoni, who also did a movie called The Fifth Chord that I like a lot. No, the answer here was Hacked Apart.
That was my other one because it seemed too simple.
Yeah.
Stuart, pick the title that isn't a real movie. The Flower with the Petals of Steel, The Pajama Girl Case, My Killer Dismembered Me, The Sweet Body of Deborah, or The Laughing Woman.
Okay, let me go down through these. So, Flower, The Petals of Steel, that sounds like a Giallo, right, Dan? Because that's very complicated.
Oh, yeah, you're ahead.
The Pajama Girl Case is okay. My Killer Dismembered Me, I like that name. That's very much I Know Who Killed Me right there. The Sweet Body of Deborah also. It's very florid. There's a lot of descriptors. I'm going to say I think The Laughing Woman, although I like the name, I think The Laughing Woman is too simple.
For one of the promotional things I've come up with for Lake Yellowwood Slaughter, I came up with the whole backstory of who the director is and what other movies he's made. And he's a made-up Italian director called Giacomo Mezzasalma. And he made Giallo movies, including one which was called, a movie of my own invention, was called L'Assassino Mi ha smembrato, which means The Killer Dismembered Me. A movie which in my canon was released in the U.S. as Hacked Apart.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
what those two titles were.
So My Killer Dismembered Me, great title. Good one, Alejandro. That's an Alejandro Arbona invention.
Thank you. And now that's almost the end of the game. Stuart has 2 points. Dan has 1. We could leave it at that. I did come up with a bonus round in case we had a tie.
Don't give me the chance to tie.
Let's do. Yeah. Okay. Let's do.
We'll call this double or nothing, Dan. Can you knock me out?
No.
Okay.
This is a very open-ended. This is just not a multiple choice, not a pick a title or anything. This is a very open-ended question that's going to be very, very, very hard. I would say nigh impossible to figure out unless you know these movies. Even if you have seen these movies, you might not think of it. So this is basically an impossible point. But then I do have a follow-up question, which might be easier.
Okay.
So this is potentially worth 2 points, maybe 1, most likely 0. The tiebreaker round, the non-existent tie. These 5 Giallo movies have one plot detail in common. What is it? The titles are Who Saw Her Die, Autopsy, Don't Torture a Duckling, The Bloodstained Shadow, and 7 Bloodstained Orchids. What could those 5 movies have in common?
I haven't seen any of them.
And I've only seen Don't Torture a Duckling with Johnny.
I've listened to the band Autopsy, so maybe I have an advantage there. My guess is that there's a ghost in the movie of a person who's been killed, one of the victims.
I'm going to say that a red herring, a mistaken killer, someone who they think is going to be the killer, is killed.
Okay.
I would say that's a thing that applies to maybe 100% of Giallo movies. Have that
So,
element.
technically correct, Dan.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I meant that like people are like, oh, this person's the killer. We're gonna.
These 5 movies in particular, one thing they have in common is that a Roman Catholic priest is a character in each of these movies. Now, follow-up question. In which movie is that plot detail unlike the others? Which movie stands out for that plot detail actually being different in one way?
So, Dan, you've seen Don't Torture a Duckling.
I'm going to say it is Don't Torture a Duckling, and the difference is that the priest is the killer.
The correct answer is Autopsy. The priest is not the killer.
Wow, the only time it didn't happen.
Okay, so it looks like I walked away with this.
I got to study. Yeah, you walked away with one more.
If the listener did not want a spoiler there, go back and then go ahead to the second.
Just dial into the Eternal Sunshine Machine and erase it.
I accept my victory. I'm going to chalk it up to my skills. But I think this highlights a thing where I kind of have a complicated relationship with Giallo movies. I wasn't a big fan of Dario Argento, and I kind of stayed away from a lot of Fulci stuff. But then I found that De Palma's movies and other clearly influenced by Giallo movies are definitely more my speed. But if I wanted to dip my toes in, what are a couple of good intro points? I'm sure there's some of the things you've already mentioned.
It's funny that Dario Argento is such a ready association for people looking to get into Giallo. I love Dario Argento, but as we discussed before, maybe half his movies or half of his better known movies are not necessarily Giallo because they're supernatural. And then of the ones that are Giallo, some of them are so. I'm not a big fan of Cat o' Nine Tails and whatever. In Argento in particular, I love The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and I love Tenebrae, which is an early 80s one.
I saw in love.
Those two I love a lot. And of course with Mario and Dario. Bava and Dario Argento are basically the big two of Giallo. They're the more readily accessible to...
Mario and Dario are a couple of plumbers, right? Who fight turtle monsters.
Bordering on...
hey, it's a fine.
Sure.
And then there's Wadario, of course.
Yeah.
But yes, people are quick to recommend Argento and Bava, and they're good. There are a lot of good movies there. I think if you go a little further afield, some of the directors that are big in Giallo fandom but less well known to people outside have made some movies that are really, really interesting. 3 favorite directors of mine are a guy called Umberto Lenzi, Sergio Martino, and Luciano Ercole. Now, here's the secret. The thing that those 3 directors have in common is that their best movies are all written by a screenwriter called Ernesto Gastaldi. And Ernesto Gastaldi is the secret weapon of a good Giallo. If you look him up on IMDb or Letterboxd and start going through those movies, those are some of the best and most interesting ones.
Okay.
Umberto Lenzi made 4 movies with this American actress, Carol Clover. One of them we had in here in the quiz was A Quiet Place to Kill. That is my favorite movie with A Quiet Place in the title. I love that movie. Sergio Martino, of course, again, it's hard to recommend Giallo movies because you have to know the level of violence and in some cases sexual violence that you're getting into. But Torso is a movie that I like a lot. Torso is like a late Giallo proto-slasher. It has more in common with slasher movies, maybe, arguably.
But that's good for me because I speak slasher movie.
Mm-hmm. And then, Sergio Martino also did Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, and The Strange Vices of Mrs. Ward, and All the Colors of the Dark are very good movies. There's a director also called Luciano Ercoli who worked a few times with his wife, Nieves Navarro from Spain. And they made a movie that I love called Death Walks at Midnight. That was the third of their collaborations, but it's my favorite. Some people prefer the second one, which is Death Walks on High Heels. Death Walks at Midnight is
both good titles.
Really cool movie where, unlike a lot of, like slashers, Giallo movies come in for a lot of, people accuse them of being misogynist because of violence against women and that kind of thing. But similar to slashers, in a lot of cases, these are movies about women who are in danger, who try to seek help and no one believes them.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's weirdly kind of feminist. It's hard to describe a movie as feminist when it has that much violence against women. But these movies are about believe women, and these women go to the police and they go to friends and they go to men and men of authority.
And it's clearly like a killer exploiting the system.
A lot of times, yeah. And this particular one, Death Walks at Midnight, is about a woman whose on again, off again boyfriend basically tricks her into doing. It's a very kind of he fucks with consent in a way. He doses her with a fictional hallucinogen during a photo shoot. She thinks she witnessed a murder, but they're not sure if it was a hallucination.
Photo shoots are pretty Giallo, right?
But then she's such a great character. Having had this done to her, she then proceeds to go to the guy's office and throw a rock through his window. She's a really cool character. And then she becomes a detective, proactively trying to solve this murder. That movie is also really interesting because at the end of the movie, there's a hitman who wears a shirt and a tie and then a yellow plaid vest and black leather gloves. And during the movie, he gets his face caked in cement and suddenly his face is all powdery. And it looks so much like the Christopher Nolan, Heath Ledger Joker that I'm this must have been, Christopher Nolan must have seen this. It looks uncanny.
And which one was this?
This is Death Walks at Midnight, directed by Luciano Ercoli.
Okay. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this episode and get all these notes down.
What else? I mentioned Umberto Lenzi, Ercoli, Sergio Martino.
I feel for me, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
And how readily available are some of these?
When it comes to streaming, a lot of things are on Tubi. That's great if you don't mind watching them with ads. But when it comes to Giallo, they almost benefit from that kind of thing. And Tubi, it is the people's streaming platform.
Yeah.
A lot of them are on Shudder. Things on Shudder come and go, so keep an eye out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally pretty well curated.
I know that Criterion puts a Giallo thing out every once in a while.
Yes, and if you're into buying, physical media, there are certain, Vinegar Syndrome and Arrow put out a lot of cool box sets. They do sales and things. You can get some cool movies, cheap sometimes. I'm a big fan of. I buy always the Giallo Essentials from Arrow and the Forgotten Gialli from Vinegar Syndrome. I have all of those volumes.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Have you watched all the movies in those collections?
Yes. The Forgotten Gialli ones in particular are tough because I buy every volume and then I watch all the movies and I'm why did I buy this volume?
Love your level of dedication.
But there are gems in there. It is worth it. Yeah. And the Giallo Essentials from Arrow are some really good box sets. There's a lot of really great stuff in those.
This has been great. Can you, just one more time, Alejandro, can you give us a pitch on your new Kickstarter and where people can find it?
There is already a pre-launch sign-up page for the Kickstarter. When you're listening to this, I think the Kickstarter will kick off maybe 2 weeks after this episode airs, something like that, more or less. But there is a pre-launch sign-up page. I can give you guys the link if you want to put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Please.
It's called Lake Yellowwood Slaughter. It's written by me, drawn by Gavin Guidry. The cover is painted by an artist from Spain called Suspiria Vilches, the aptly named Suspiria.
That's so funny. And this is a gorgeous cover.
It looks like it's straight off a VHS box, which is exactly what I want.
Either like a VHS box or I mean, I guess like an Italian comic that I'm like, I need to find out what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, Suspiria Vilches is in fact an artist who does covers for Vinegar Syndrome for Giallo releases. So she is officially a professional Giallo artist in a way. Yes, it's a slasher movie made by a Giallo director, adapted to comic book form. I'll give you guys this sneak preview. The first 2 pages are a little tongue-in-cheek gag where they're reminiscent of if it's 1983 and you just turned on TV to watch a movie and you feel like you're soaring above a city, flying into the woods to a glorious starburst in the sky. That's what the first 2 pages of the comic are. If you're hearing that, if that music starts playing in your head automatically, I feel you should know that music, there's actually a song that goes with it and it has lyrics.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, I can't find it streaming anywhere. It's on YouTube, but I can't find it. Like, it's not on Apple Music or anything. But it is a song. It's kind of a bluesy, like, it's got bass. It's got like a blues guitar.
So funny.
The lyrics go, anyone who has a fantasy, come with me, come with me. So yeah, look it up on YouTube.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So thanks so much, Alejandro. This has been a mini episode of the Flophouse podcast. We are produced by Mr. Alex Smith, who is in the room. Say hi, Alex.
Hi.
This podcast is on Maximum Fun. It's a podcast network. There's plenty of great podcasts. Check them out. For the Flophouse, I've been Stuart Wellington.
I've been Jan McCoy.
And joining us is
Alejandro Arbona. Thank you guys for having me. Stuart, enjoy your J&B.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna get faded, baby, and watch some movies.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
Directly
by you.